Hey everyone, thanks very much for joining today. We'll just wait until everyone's in the room. I can see participants starting to go up. So we'll just wait until it flattens out and then we'll get started. But thank you very much for joining today. Has Branch Road had their Christmas party yet, Simon, or is that coming?
We're going to have a New Year party,
Oh, nice.
like a January party.
Is that
It's
like a dry Jan party, or is it still going to be a bit boozy?
yeah. So there's two reasons. Why. Number one is because clients are having a crazy end to Q4, so everyone's really busy. And number two, exactly that. Dry January. It's a lot cheaper to buy still water than it is to buy pints and wine.
Yeah, nice. I do
Typically.
like that. We've got ours tomorrow, so everyone's descending on London at the moment. Um, Great. All right. Think quite a lot of people are in the room at the moment, so let's get started. So thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to be speaking about finding new buyers and what Salesforce ISVs can learn from enterprise tech. So to introduce myself, my name is Ben McCarthy, the founder of Salesforce Ben, and I'm joined today by Simon Cliffe, who is the founder and CEO of Branch Road, end-to-end integrated marketing agency that we have partnered with. So Simon, thank you very much for being here today. Branch Road works with some of the biggest tech brands in the world across the US, EMEA, APAC, helping them find and engage with new prospects. So hopefully with my knowledge of the Salesforce ecosystem combined with Simon's should be a pretty good show today. So today we're going to be discussing a few things. The key lessons and best practices and strategies that ISVs can learn from big tech, how to create content that your audience actually cares about. You know, it's easy to say, but much harder to do in practice, and how to shift your marketing to an end-to-end model that can help close more deals. We're also going to be having a Q&A at the end. So if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box and we'll try and get through to as many as possible. And hopefully Q&A is working. If not, then the chat is perfectly fine. So to kick things off, let's zoom out a bit and take a look at the ISV landscape in 2023. And it hasn't been the easiest of years. It's been pretty difficult. Salesforce and the wider tech ecosystem have laid off hundreds of thousands of people. Marketing budgets have been cut. Teams are smaller, and demonstrating ROI on marketing spend continues to be a challenge. Something else that I think has impacted this is Salesforce's slowdown in revenue. Salesforce were growing at 20 to 25% year on year for a decade, if not more. And over the last few quarters, this has dropped to 10 to 12% annually, which, you know, is actually pretty good for a company of Salesforce's size, but it has drastically slowed down from where they were before. Also, less customers joining the Salesforce ecosystem means there's less customers to sell to, and you know the App Exchange has been getting more saturated for a few years now, so that's some challenges as well. I also think it's important to point out that within this 10 to 12% growth, which is actually adding about 3.3 billion a year to Salesforce's revenue, that's a mixture of lots of different products, right? There's Slack, there's Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud, a lot of products that maybe not all ISVs focus on. You know, obviously a lot of ISVs are focused on the core platform. So within that number, you know, there's going to be a kind of smaller number of new customers you can actually sell to. But despite this, and in my opinion, I know Simon's as well, there is a lot of opportunity for Salesforce ISVs out there. The ecosystem is still a huge driver for growth. For every $1, I'm sure you've seen this stat before from an IDC report in 2021, for every $1 that Salesforce makes, the ecosystem makes 6, meaning SIs, ISVs, everyone in the ecosystem. So if you take into account that 3.3 billion that Salesforce are adding every year at the moment with 10% of their revenue, if you multiply that by 6, you get about 20 billion in ecosystem effect. So there's a huge amount of money out there on the table that Salesforce customers are looking to spend. And then we're also seeing a lot of existing ISVs that have been around for a while switching lanes and focusing on enterprise as SaaS companies tend to do. So there is that gap at the kind of, you know, SMB market for new entrants. So before we head into the main section and kind of quiz Simon on his thoughts, we'd love to launch a poll, which is what are the main marketing challenges you've faced this year? So Simon, maybe while we wait for people to answer that, maybe you can kind of summarize the pain points that you're seeing in the market at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a funny 2023 not just for the clients that we work with, but like in general for so many reasons when it comes to business. And we know for a fact that this year, sales cycles are much longer. Like SaaS sales cycle length, we know has increased by just under a quarter in 2023, which means deals are going to be harder to close. And like for many, that's a massive challenge for cash flow to start with. I mean, 24% is crazy, and cash flow is the name of the game for most businesses. So I mean, that's an incredible stat. So that's the first one, I'd say. I can see we've got some results coming in for these challenges.
Yeah, pretty much aligning with what you've just said there.
Yeah, so you can see smaller budgets, definitely smaller teams. That's something else that we can cover off. Disengaged audience, absolutely. So much harder. Something we're going to talk about. How do you engage this audience? They're just being battered left, right, and center from content, inboxes. Unclear direction from senior leadership. That's 16%. Yeah, that's pretty good, actually. I'd say that means that there's, 84% are saying there's good direction from senior leadership. That's really positive to know. And yeah, there you go. Longer sales cycles. That's massive. I mean, maybe there's another question today that we could ask. This whole thing about if your organization has struggled to align marketing and sales, this is something I'm really curious about because this is a challenge. So, have your marketing and sales teams work well together this year? So again, I know we're hitting you quickly with these Zoom polls, but we can certainly ask this one as well if we've got that question coming up.
There we go.
Because I mean, for our clients right now, without doubt, I mean, it's been building up for the last few years. In the past, you could get away with marketing going off and doing something and sales going off and doing something. And frankly, revenue in tech was so strong that no one really questioned it. But as the spotlight comes back in on profit, there is this, under the spotlight, this sales and marketing relationship. And I've got to be honest with you, it's become clear that these two teams, they're not always aligned. Now, if your right hand doesn't know what your left hand's doing, there you go. Sometimes 58%, yes, 26% they are aligned, no is 16% as well. Well, we're seeing a lot of this. So if you haven't got a marketing and a sales team that are aligned when the business is under pressure to deliver revenue, and there's so much more focus on not just growth, but profit now as well, then you have a problem because you've got sales and leads opportunities are actually falling through what we call the sales and marketing chasm. This is something that's been building up as well, because you have marketing defining lead definition over there. You've got marketing qualifying leads and they're saying, yeah, we're doing what we're meant to be doing based on what we think is right. And here's your bunch of qualified leads. And you got sales on the other hand saying, nope, that's not a qualified lead as far as we're concerned. These aren't the right leads. Or in some cases, they don't even know that there's a pool of leads ready for them as well. And this is not just small or mid-enterprise we're talking about large enterprise as well. So the sales and marketing chasm means that your pipeline is leaking. And if your pipeline's leaking, then you're in a little bit of trouble. And I think we just had it as one of the challenges that was responded to in the poll there. Another big thing I've seen is so many of our clients, of course, budgets are smaller. I mean, we're talking across the entire board, but the objectives and what needs to be delivered is exactly the same. So companies have got to work with smaller teams. That was another point that we had up there as well. They've got to create content. They've got to launch campaigns. They've got to be much more cost effective. They have to show ROI as well. So as before, though, big tech companies were investing money and dollars in marketing with a lot more confidence, but now the bean counters are out and every single thing that goes live has to be justified. They have to show that there's an ROI on there as well. I mean, that's an interesting stat there. 41%. So then to consistently demonstrate ROI, these are new stats. These are 2023 stats. So pressure there's a lot of pressure to fix problems, but to deliver big results with the same budget, smaller teams, it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot for that, Simon. And it's clear there's been a big shift in what companies are prioritizing, especially as so many businesses are expected to do more with less. So we have, I think this is our last poll that we've got. So yeah, we'd love to kind of understand see the question now, but yeah, understand if you think your marketing team has an in-depth understanding of your audience's challenges, because obviously this is absolutely key, and it's something that we work a lot with the ISVs that we work with, because the Salesforce ecosystem is so broad. There's so many roles, there's so many pain points. It really is so important to understand that niche within the ecosystem that you're focusing on.
I mean, there you go. Do you think your organization has, right? So yes, 30%, no, 35%, sometimes 35%. Well, I think if it's sometimes, that's hit and miss. If it's no, obviously that's not great. So for me, that's 70% are struggling to engage with their audience. I mean, if you think about your audience, your buyers, your prospects, their challenges are the same as yours, right? They're facing the same things: smaller budgets. They're facing deliver more for less. They're being told to deliver with smaller teams as well, and with justify your ROI all the time. So you're trying to get in front of those people who are having the same struggles that you are as well. But for me, in my experience, the companies that win, and I know, Ben, I've said this to you a million times before, are those that are thinking super hard about the audiences that they are trying to serve and the content that they're engaging with. Because if you fail to do that, forget it. We've just said that. I'm being bombarded with millions of messages every day. There's so much content out there. And great storytelling is, and it's always going to be, one of the most important ways, the most important routes of elevating your brands and getting yourself noticed in this broad, wide market that you're facing as well. I mean, if you think about today, right, or over the last few days, the last news headlines that have grabbed your attention that you've seen online, in papers, across lifestyle sites, across social media, whatever it is, was it talking about a product release update that you've never ever heard of before, or was it something that actually had some human interest in there as well? Because if we did another vote now and someone said it was a product release update that I engaged with a headline, I'd say you're probably lying. It was more likely to be a much more human-led interest story, because it gives you an emotional reaction. And if you get an emotional reaction from your audience, then you are halfway there to engaging them. I'm sick and tired of hearing ISVs tell me, if only I had engage people in front of me, because I know once I've got them in front of me, once I'm giving them a demo, they buy from me. The trouble is, you're up against a lot of competition and you need to grab their attention. So that's hard. Absolutely. So the job is, how do you get those engaged, that line of potential buyers in front of you? And most companies just don't understand their audience. And again, this is not a problem that's inherent in small companies or mid-sized companies, or just exclusive to large enterprise. It's across the entire board. So they don't know what to talk about or who they're actually talking about and what they're actually doing if they're just throwing content out there for the sake of doing content, and it's just not going to work. So I think AI, Benjamin, we've spoken about before as well, is a big hot topic at the moment. And I think, you know, we've gone back and forth, and we've been asked so many times, you know, what's the role of AI in not just business generally, but what's the role of it in marketing as well, and trying to engage an audience. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for AI in marketing, but it's not necessarily where you might think. There's a lot of companies that are liberally using tools like Chat GPT, and they're just using them to spit out articles, spit out blog posts, and spit out thought leadership pieces. I've got to tell you, quite frankly, it's produced a load of old tosh. There's a lot of tosh content out there. There was a huge amount of tosh content before, and now there's even more. And I know some people within SEO where I say to them, how big is your content team? If they're an SEO agency, and they say, it's me and it's my team called Chat GPT, you know. Now, it's only good, AI content is only good as the content that's already out there. it reuses, it repurposes the same opinions, right? That's how AI works. Scans, grabs, learns, rewrites. So it's only going to be as effective AI and how you use that within your marketing tool set as the people who are, who are using them. And creativity is a key part of squeezing the most value out of the output of AI as well. AI does a huge amount of the donkey work, right? And in some cases, we'll use it if there's elements that we need to be able to, research. But you need to feed AI original creative thinking, original creative thoughts. Otherwise, you're just going to be recycling that content. It's just going to be all this content is slightly different take on the last piece that you read. And it should never, ever, AI never, Ben, I know I've punched these into you many times. AI generated content never takes the place of your own expert opinion. Ben, you are a thought leader. AI cannot replace your thoughts. It can't. You have instant reactions. You have interesting takes. There's people that want to understand what you are saying. So you are the subject matter expert in so many things, and you need to be able to prove it. And I think to stand out, ISVs need to push back on average. They need to cut the crap and cut above all that crap and use AI to give yourself time to be more creative. So use it wisely.
Yeah, 100%. We've been doing a lot of research into AI. We've set up a kind of weekly stand up where people do research into AI, test out ChatGPT for various scenarios, and then come back and report on what they've found and if we can implement it into any of our processes. And we've implemented very little at the moment because we think it's great for some things, summarizing sections, doing research. If you're getting writer's block or something and need a bit of inspiration, ChatGPT is perfect. But we don't use any of the content it generates at, like a copy and paste in any of our blog content. And it's just because we think we can do a better job. And I would imagine most marketers can do a better job also. I saw a comparison the other day it was kind of talking about ChatGPT and saying, it is the internet condensed. So if you want the most generic answer for anything, then use ChatGPT. It's great. But most people don't want the most generic answer possible. I have actually seen an instance of a company in the Salesforce ecosystem that I won't name who uses ChatGPT. I can tell for every single blog post, it's about 5 blog posts a day. And actually, they are getting a reaction on SEO. I can see it through Ahrefs. Their SEO is actually going up. Great. But I've never seen anyone reference the articles from this website before. And I don't think they ever will, because while they might be getting clicks on Google, I highly doubt the engagement rates or there's any respect to that brand, just because it is generic content. So I think great for some things, and I mean we could be very wrong, Simon. Give it 6 months time or something, AI could have completely changed. But I think at this very time, I do completely agree. But one thing that we've started doing a lot this year is working with Salesforce influencers. With the ISVs that we're working. So we're bringing in outside expertise from creators that are operating in specific niches within Salesforce. So these might be DevOps expert, flow experts, admin admin influencers. So in most of the webinars or ebooks or anything that we produce in partnership with ISVs, we're kind of encouraging them to get an influencer involved, and usually this does involve a payment which we facilitate, but we just pass it directly to the influencer. And there's 3 main benefits that we see with working with influencers. One is that you're getting extra thought leadership content, put directly into your webinar, ebook, or whatever it might be, which is great. 2, it seems a lot less salesy and marketing-y. If you've got this third party which isn't talking about your product whatsoever, just purely trying to provide thought leadership, and it really helps in webinars or ebooks. And thirdly, you're also tapping into this individual's network as well. So if we're doing a webinar, the individual will usually promote it. It's great for their brand also. Hey, I'm joining this webinar with this well-known ISV. If you're also using that as a kind of on-demand asset, the webinar or ebook, you can use that person's name and face to promote that in the future, which I think would increase the kind of click-through rate, conversion rate, or whatever you want to measure. So that's something we've been trialing this year, and it's been very successful.
And that does not surprise me in the least, because I was on the train half an hour ago, getting back to do this lovely chat with you. And I counted in my inbox, because I was in a meeting from about 8 o'clock this morning onwards. So between 8 and whatever it was, 4:15, I counted in my inbox. I had 51 emails trying to sell me something. 51 emails. It wasn't trying to say, hey, how you doing? It was just an instant, buy this, right? You need to buy this. We've researched you on LinkedIn and you should be buying this, right? It's bullcrap. It's nonsense. That is not engaging an audience, because to engage me, you need to give me something where, to go back, I have that human reaction to something as well. And especially as we move into this age of AI, it's so much less about the hard sell, and it's more about finding the specific interests of your prospects, of your potential buyers, and using that, and using influencers. Influencers are an amazing tool to be able to have a conversation on your behalf, to be able to be that top of funnel, engage someone with something interesting, give them something of value, give them something that's in it for them. It's not just in it for you. So I think absolutely, for content needs and for building your awareness, for trying to stand up about all this bloody noise, influencers is a really key thing.
Yeah, 100%. And just kind of add on to that with another thing that I've seen, not something we're doing, that I'm seeing a trend in the ecosystem that I'm sure a lot of other people have seen a lot as well, which is companies creating free educational content, usually in the form of an LMS. So this is really, sorry, LMS is a learning management system for those that don't know. So this is very big in the Salesforce DevOps space. So most Salesforce DevOps companies have their own LMS now, training people up on, fairly complex features such as CI/CD and version control. A lot of Salesforce professionals don't know about these because DevOps is so new. And it's a really great, less invasive way to build a connection with your potential audience, educate them, get them engaged with the brand, so they can gradually become more informed about what your main offering later down the line. And something that we're doing with an ISV at the moment, which I think is quite a cool concept, is creating like a series of mini training courses, which are going to be produced by us. So it's going to have our team on, but it's going to be handed over to the ISV, and then they're going to gate that on a landing page. So it's just going to be it's got like a mini LMS kind of. There's no login, there won't be any login or sign up, see your progress, but it's going to give you access to these free educational videos, which are produced by us, very high quality, talking about their specific product, not their product, sorry, but their what their product does and what this space does. It's a fairly complex, complex kind of product area. So yeah, that's something else which I think is quite out of the box. I read something the other day that was encouraging people to stop using white papers and ebooks and instead use videos. It's much more kind of engaging, and video might not be right for all formats, but I think for some, I think it's a good option.
I think that's a golden point, because your job is to understand your audience, not to scare them off. And a good practice is finding a way that you've just suggested there, right? It's finding ways. It's bringing people in because there's something in it for them, right? So you're going to bring them in, and once they're in, you're going to see a good marketer, a good ISV would be looking at the content that these leads, because they're coming in, are engaging with. And once you understand more about the areas that most people are engaging with, and you expand upon that, then you get to hit them with your product, because you're talking about the problem at that level. You're understanding the specific areas of those problems and the impact that's having on that person's business. And then you've got the power to push through your solution. Not, please don't suddenly go for book a demo, because you're having this adult intelligent conversation. You're having this adult interaction with them using a formula, a platform like that. And then you find ways to say, okay, we think we can solve some of these problems over here. And you've got them engaged, which goes back to that point where all the ISVs we work with say, we had people in front of us and we could show them a demo. There you go. You've got them. That you're pushing against an open door. That there's huge interest because you've been working with them, and they're ready to buy. So a practice like that is a perfect example of not overselling and actually giving something to someone of value. 100%.
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of provide a kind of example of that is we sell a lot of adverts on Salesforce Ben, and we work quite closely with the ISVs to like look at their landing page, provide feedback, make sure it's like the advert looks is a nice design, that kind of thing. And we're working with one ISV that had a book a demo CTA. It got a decent amount of clicks. Actually, I can't remember whether the messaging was referencing the demo, but they didn't get any conversions. No. It was just way too much of an aggressive, it's a cold prospect clicking on this thing. They're not going to book a demo, especially landing on that page. They might like click around the site and then come back to a book a demo form, which won't be tracked. But then we changed it to a white paper or an ebook of some kind, and then the leads started rolling in. So it's something that, any ISV that we work with and sends me over a book a demo thing, I go, you can use this, but just to let you know, it doesn't usually work too well. And in my opinion, it's much better to, engage, let's say 20, 30 people over the course of a month with an advert, as opposed to waiting for that elusive book a demo CTA, which may never come. In this instance, the advert was up for 2 weeks and it never came. And then the past 2 weeks, we got quite a lot of leads coming in. So,
and on that point, that's trust. Right, because you're expecting one thing. I'm going to take the effort of clicking through on this because you've interested me, right? You've baited me in with something that I think is right. And if then the first thing I see on this landing page, no matter how well it's been designed, is book a demo, I'm like, get lost. Yeah. That's my reaction as a normal consumer. If someone is trying to sell me something and it goes straight to something like that after I've gone through the effort of clicking on something, absolutely, you've lost me. And loyalty is because you've got so much competition now, is hard. So once you've upset someone like that, it's really hard to get them back. They're going to see your name on another banner ad, or they're going to see your name somewhere else linked to another piece of content you're promoting. They're not going to trust you. It's hard to get them back. Really, really. It's easy to piss someone off. It's hard for them to forgive you. Right? So yeah.
Yeah, very true. So we've kind of talked about a few, ideas for content marketing assets that will really resonate with people in the Salesforce ecosystem. But how do we bring these activities together and make them work in an end-to-end approach?
Yeah, so I guess, we don't need to over-egg this pudding, but step one has got to be the audience, right? Understand who you're talking to. Understand what motivates them. Please don't guess what you think they care about. Actually get in there, use ChatGPT for that. Do some research on your audience. Find out what the hot topics are. What are the subjects being talked about in the news? Never ignore the news agenda, because we're all impacted by the news agenda. Use the news agenda. See what people are engaging with your audience there. There are numerous steps that you can do to that. These are busy people, but you've got to make sure you're playing in their wheelhouse. And then you need to think carefully. I know this is teaching how to suck eggs, but you need to think carefully about each and every piece of content you are creating, right? Go back to the earlier points where people say they're under pressure on smaller budgets, smaller teams, but being asked to deliver more, right? One piece of content, how many different uses can you get out of that content? How can you repurpose one single piece of content to drive value? If you are, you have a reporting line on top of you need to show value, you need to show results. Absolutely. I've taken one piece of content and I fed this amount of content channels, which has resulted in this as well. Really, 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 really careful. So in practice, it's understanding the audience, it's crafting an engaging story because you know what they're thinking. You know what's actually going to have a better chance of engaging with them. You've just taught there, building a landing page. There's no point in going off and creating good stuff and not, it just disappears into the ether. Build a landing page that then has a valuable asset on there as well. You talked about white paper. White paper, yeah, works in some cases. It could be an image. It could be as simple as that. It could be, I don't know, a spot the difference, I don't know, whatever it is, something that's interesting, that's linked to what you're trying to sell as well. So it push that book a demo button down, right? Or this buy now button as well. You need to give them a reason to stick around. They need to know there's something in it for them as well. Bring in influencers. Influencers as well, Benjamin, are not just great at adding value. They are also there to help promote. If they're involved in a piece of content, an article that they're proud of, they're going to promote it to their audience as well. So they're going to promote it. you got to think about the wrapper content, right? Because again, you've got the landing page, you've got great content, you've got influencers, but how are you then going to proactively promote this as well? Are you going to use paid? Are you just going to use organic? So think about that social content, that wrapper content that you're going to use to drive people. And again, if you've got an asset over here that you've created, how do you recycle that to create social assets from that as well? You know, you guys go to millions of events, film snippets from those events. You know, ISVs, all I hear is come and meet me at this event, come and meet this event. Film me. If you want to talk about marketing, film you, film someone. You've got an iPhone. You know, it doesn't have to be fantastic. It's for social. So film snippets with speakers that you found engaging or people that you meet, your customers. Think about interesting headlines or quotes, editorial, not selling, that you can use to engage people as well. And once you've driven people to your landing page, right? Once you've done that and they've honored you by leaving their details, which is by no small means art. You know, people don't want to give you their details because they know they're going to get a million emails back. But if they trust you and they're going to leave you your details, make sure you're going to nurture them properly as well. That's a massive part of this end-to-end process. Don't suddenly think you've engaged, I'm going to pick up the phone, do you want to buy this? Doesn't work like that at all. You have to nurture them properly. You don't go for the kill. You continue their engagement. You make the content more interesting. You make it more tailored to how they're engaging with that content if you're reading your CRM properly as well. So you use data to understand what they're interested in, tailor the interaction with them as well, and then you're ready to reach out. They are going to be more warm and more receptive. And there's a lot of enterprise clients that we work with. One in particular relies very heavily on customer advocacy. They sell more when their customers are talking about the problems that this brand is solving. It's a massive part of their success, other people telling their story. And what we do with these guys is they invest in a big customer story, like a customer story program. And we tier the customers. So one customer, we might be out with a film crew. One, we might be bringing them into our Riverside virtual studio. One, we might be just having a conversation, but we cut the hell out of that story. You know, we turkey slice that story to feed every part of their end-to-end machine, from paid social to organic to sales enablement to internal conversations to the nurture program. It feeds everything. So we had one story recently where we cut it in those different ways, and it gave them well over $1 million in qualified pipeline. It was a massive amount of pipeline they generated from one particular story. And like I say, it doesn't have to cost the earth. I'm not suggesting that you then hire an expensive, messy, and loud and smelly video crew. They all stink, by the way, video crews. You don't have to just do that all the time. You can have virtual studios, GFX. You can just use standalone quotes. Lots of options that you can use. It's about taking your story, positioning it so it naturally fits in with how prospects are engaging with your company across the entire sales cycle.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Simon. And we're going to kind of conclude this webinar in a minute with our top tips to take away from this webinar. But just before we get into that, Simon, could you talk a bit around the approach to help bridge the gap between sales and marketing, which seems like a eternal struggle?
Yeah, and remember a gap. So that 70% where we said we're not sure if, or whatever the percentage was, that they're, how well they work, if they work well altogether. Ultimately, you're seeing dollars, pound notes, euros, whatever currency you're dealing in, slip down the pipeline, slip down that chasm. So it's in everyone's interest to fix this as a problem. Everyone is busy, right? Everyone is in their own lane. They're in their own track. No matter how big, how small you are, there are going to be silos in your business. Again, it's not exclusive to enterprise. It's not exclusive to three-man operations. Every business suffers from silos. And a business point of view, silos are bad. It's this hand, the left hand, not knowing what the right hand's actually doing. And that is crap. Now, in terms of marketing and sales at the moment, we're seeing there is more and more cases of poor communication. There's less cohesion between the two. And again, all the responses we've had to the poll so far speak to why some of those might be problems. And globally, HubSpot research this year shows that 79% of marketing leads don't convert to sales. That's 79. That's 4 in every 5 where you've invested vast amounts of dollar in finding those leads are not converting to sales. That's a problem. Sales want one thing. Marketing are doing something else. Left hand, right hand. There she blows. I knew we had a lovely graphic for that one. So that's just vast amounts of time, resource, money, energy, blood, sweat, tears being wasted, and you've got to fix it. So for me, it's about building, though, a culture. And it's never too late to build a culture around this, where the two groups are always communicating. And sales don't just need to be told you've got leads in there. They need to actually be part of the process of what is a lead. Use sales, use their frontline coalface experience to actually understand what makes a good lead for this as a business. And you use that as your lead qualification. And then you create, as you're nurturing these leads that you're all agreed, these are turning into good leads. You're then understanding how they are moving down the funnel, and you're going to create sales enablement content that you know they're engaging with. So by the time you hand these over to sales, you know that, yes, you all agree this is a qualified lead. Yes, you've been nurturing them properly. And yes, they have the assets when they do make that call, or when they do reach out on LinkedIn, however they're going to contact them, they have the assets to continue that conversation.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Si. And just before we go into the next section, which is kind of summarizing all of our thoughts and tips to kind of take away from this webinar, Melissa has been waiting very patiently. She's had a couple of questions. Sorry, I've got to activate a light in here. The first one's quite interesting, Si. Marketing and sales disconnect seems much less a challenge than product and marketing sales alignment. Any thoughts on that?
So again, we have salespeople, sales teams that we work with saying they don't understand how the product works. Now, that's a massive problem, because if you're unclear how the product, the basics of how it works or how it's being developed, what the roadmap is, there's huge problems, because you're selling something that's completely wrong again. I would say the advice that I would offer and that I've seen work is attack the culture. Create that culture where you are instigating at the very early stage sales within the product development as well. So we know it's not an ideal world, right? Sales are over there. They're in sales because they want to make more money quickly, right? Marketing are over there because they're judged on the pile of leads and the interest that they're generating over there. And product over there because they tie everything together, because we have the product over here and how we want to be able to communicate that as well. So there has to be a conversation between product and sales and marketing to understand what are the tools that we need as a business to be able to bring these three areas together. It's a really good point. But again, it's that cultural thing as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, actually. I've spoken to some ISVs recently who are kind of looking to actually entirely redo their messaging, because since they did it last, technology's moved on so far, and their products developed, and I think probably lagged behind in the sales and marketing department. Products stormed on, and there just isn't alignment there. So yeah, very, very interesting topic. And another one.
Just one more thing on that, Ben. Again, another live example. Again, I won't name the company, but there was one instance where we had sales saying your leads are no good, and marketing saying, well, you're not selling it properly, and then product got involved as well. And it transpired that a lot of the sales teams just did not know how the product worked, right? They just didn't know enough about the intricacies about, this is how we would solve that problem over there if they're talking to a lead. And it came down to some really old school thinking, right? It came down to, we need to change some of these enablement assets and create some training assets over here. We need to create some cheat sheets, right? Some rip and reads. Product, you need to speak to you. You guys need to speak to these guys. So the point I'm trying to make here is, a lot of people would just rely on tech and process automation, which is massive because it brings everything together, but sometimes don't ignore the old school. Just don't ignore the old school of getting one person to talk to another person. Bang, there you go. Happy days.
Yeah, nice and simple in practice, in theory, sorry.
In theory.
And so, so another one from Melissa. Do you think that marketing has a definitive idea on what success looks like when they spend money? For example, if they sponsor an event, what does success look like? Is the goal name recognition, email addresses, pre-qualified leads, etc.? I mean, I would say when we work with ISVs, it's one of our first questions. We really need to understand that in order to provision the best services and like that. For example, when we do a webinar, You know, the name of the game is really lead generation, and they're either going to want to go broad and more brand recognition, or go super niche and find really those qualified buyers for their product. So I mean, from our point of view, it definitely goes into a lot what when we're working directly with marketing. But I mean, how are you seeing this, Simon, when you're working directly with the marketing teams?
Every kind of like team that we talk to about this, their challenges are different. And it's really hard to be able to say to you, if you're going to invest X amount of dollars in an event, whether you've got a stand presence there, whatever the investment entails, whether you've got a speaker slot, whatever it is, don't think about what it is that you're delivering until you understand what it is that you need to achieve. So again, it just comes back to your basic. If you haven't got an idea of why you're investing in an event, don't do it. Because do you have enough leads? Is it qualified leads you're going for? Then you need a specific track. You need a very specific talk track. You need to make sure that your booth is set up to be able to capture QR codes, to make sure that you're doing everything you can to bring people over. A marketer, you say event, especially to the marketing teams that sit, that specialize in just the events. They're just going to want to spend dollars to make the stand amazing, to make your presence really, really amazing. But you've got to question that and say, right, is that actually what the business needs right now? Because if you're doing that, is it because you're trying to build awareness? Is it because we want 20 interviews with tier 1 press who are going to be at this event as well? Or is it because we want to raise the profile of our C-suite? Or is it because we're trying to drive leads? So you have to be clear, old school, understand why you're investing money in marketing in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for those great questions, Melissa. So we're on to our final section of the presentation now. And if you do have any more questions, we should have a bit of time left at the end, so feel free to drop them in. But Simon, how can Salesforce ISVs on the call put into practice everything we've spoken about? And what are some top tips to getting started with an end-to-end marketing approach?
Cool. Okay. So think about what we talked about so far. I mean, up there has got to be this culture between sales and marketing, right? Aligning their goals, aligning their targets, making sure that they're talking to each other, and there's integration between marketing and sales, right? Because it really frustrates me. There's so many problems in the world. The last thing I want to see is just wasted money, where you can see a process is set up and it's not going to work because these guys are not talking to these guys. And Melissa, you're right, product needs to be involved in this as well. So creating a better culture where you're integrating goals, you're aligning those goals as well, is really, really, really critical. And that is, regardless that if you're watching this and there are 2 of you in your business, or there are 2,000 of you in your business, if there are only 2, start this culture now. Be clear that this is critical. You cannot grow your business without marketing. You cannot grow your business without selling. And if you're not integrating them at an early stage, you have problems coming up down the line. I promise you that. So be really responsible and make sure you're absolutely nailing that. Secondly, I'd say, based on what we've been talking about, the challenges that we saw in the poll results, it's got to be about understanding your audience. It's got to be about great storytelling. It's got to be understanding how content can be used as part of your end-to-end marketing approach. So it means I know with confidence what my specific audience set, and you might have 3 or 4 different personas. You have to be clear how you're going to find them and how you're going to engage with them with good storytelling. And I'll repeat this again, never be afraid to steal the news agenda. And I'm not talking about crap PR days. I'm talking about the real news agenda, because we're all in a mess together. The economy is in a collective mess, and we're all impacted ultimately by supply chain problems, by the cost of living, by everything that we see in the news today. So don't be afraid to use some of that as well. So think about the content that you're creating, how you're putting it out there. If an intelligent 12-year-old wouldn't understand with how you're engaging your audience, or how this piece of content impacts them, don't put it out there. If there's a complicated white paper, don't put it out there. People haven't got time to read that. So I think, a good example of an end-to-end model is someone who, and again, we're now working with a lot of US clients where we've gone in and they said we're not getting enough leads. no one's getting enough leads. Everyone says that. We're investing money, we're not getting enough leads. And you go through all the elements of the end-to-end process from this, aligning the sales and marketing goal, finding your target audience. How do you engage your target audience? What tactics are you using, from organic to paid, to email campaign nurture, to Google AdWords as well, to then nurturing those leads and using leads to close deals with the right sales enablement tools. And it's a really good eye opener, this graph right here. If you're going to screen grab something, screen grab this, because this is your end-to-end process right here. And if you're not hitting one of these correctly, it's going to fail. So I'd say it's absolutely this diagram here. And the clients we're working with say, we're really good at this bit, we're struggling with this bit. So we either come in and help bank it up, or we work with some coaching. We try and bring their teams up to date, because from an agency point of view, we're not in-house. We constantly have to keep up with the latest trends. So that makes us a good, fresh pair of eyes as well. And on a lot of occasions, just to have a conversation, the meter will never be running as well. And this is the end-to-end model that you should be creating. We have marketing and sales working together to define the lead definition. We qualify those leads properly. We have a pool of qualified leads, which means that hot leads are coming out of this funnel at all stages. And the ones that aren't engaging with sales, they come back in and we re-nurture them. And if after a few occasions you've got the wrong lead in there, so we just tip them out and make sure that they don't get bothered with any more emails. And it's really important that we start having these conversations as soon as possible. Team alignment, sales enablement, they don't happen overnight. You know, people have their own agendas. No matter how wonderful your company is, people have their own way of doing things. And your job, if you're a leader in the business, if you're a leader of a business unit, is to start having these conversations to make team alignment and sales enablement happen. It's a process that takes time, takes a lot of effort as well. Please don't give up after your first go, but it's incredibly valuable to start working towards an end-to-end approach as early as possible.
Great. Thank you so much, Si. That was an excellent summary, and that does bring us to the end of the content for the webinar. So yeah, thank you so much, Si, for all your knowledge that you shared there. Super useful. I think, if feel free to get in touch with myself on LinkedIn or Simon as well, to chat through anything that we've spoken about today. If there are any more questions from the audience, now is the time to ask them. So I'll just give it a minute or so just to see if there are any burning questions.
I know it's really.
I think one thing. Sorry, go ahead, Simon.
So I know sometimes it's hard to think of a question on the spot once there's a lot of the information that you and I have just spilt out over here, hopefully in some kind of order. But again, just to repeat what you're saying, if you have a question, and you want to come and talk to Ben or myself on LinkedIn, honestly, the meter won't be running just if you have a problem and you want a fresh opinion on it as well. And you won't be sold to, we live by what we talk about here. It's not an instant, oh, you need this solution right here, and this is how much it's going to cost you. It's just having a conversation. I like to learn about some of these challenges, because the more I learn about the challenges that you guys are facing, the better it is for how we develop our business model as well.
Yeah, that's great. There is a question here from Gabriella, Simon. What percentage of conversion leads would you think is reasonable?
Again, it depends on your business. It depends on your audience. Some audiences are super broad and there's lots of leads coming in. You can't expect those to convert. Some, where it's more of an ABM approach, the audience is much smaller. So if you're using LinkedIn, it costs you a lot more money to actually get your cost per lead. I would say I'm uncomfortable answering that question because everyone's different. It's not because I haven't got benchmarks, but again, if you come and talk to us and you give us more about your audience, you're more about your product as well, then maybe we could give you like an industry standard that you should be aiming for. We've got Natalie, who's our head of marketing ops. She is a data nerd. She loves questions like that. So she just needs to be fed a bit more. So if you want to come to us afterwards on LinkedIn with a few bits of detail, then we'll try and get an answer for you.
Great, thanks, Si. And just before we wrap up, I'll just kind of put this here to see if there's any more questions, and just for a minute. But we are looking to launch a Salesforce ISV survey. in January. So if there are any questions that you're interested in understanding from the ISV ecosystem, or any insights that you'd like to get out of it, feel free to get in touch with myself on LinkedIn, or my email is ben@salesforceben.com. And yeah, write me a little note, and then we'll be sure to include that. I'm not sure I think there is some ISV surveys around, but there's not one that I've seen recently. So I think this should be really, really, really interesting for next year, especially given the kind of economy at the moment. So great. I don't think, just double check any more questions. Mike, freaking awesome stuff. You're too kind, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I think oh, sorry, there is a couple of questions here. Good question from Mesa there. And thank you very much for using Salesforce, Ben. Glad you like it. My question is, how can we create this culture of communication between teams, and how can we motivate them to do that?
I mean, I'm sure you'll have opinion on this. I'll give you my opinion as well. Before I moved into this industry, I worked as a broadcast journalist with a lot of journalists. I had 250 odd journalists that were working for me, where every day we were saying, how do we take the main story of the day and make it relevant for all of these different audiences we're serving? And we had to change the culture, because people they didn't want to adapt the way that they were presenting the news to the different audience types. There's a lot of people, old school people. And job number one is, sometimes you have to accept when there are people that will not budge, right? So there's an element where you need to not beat yourself up over if someone is not going to change. There are people that will not change, and you need to know when to stop kicking a dead horse, right? So that's my human tip number one. But the most important thing is making sure that if you are leading these groups of people, understanding the goals for each of these different groups of people. And then you understand and you bring these people together, and from those shared goals, you work out what is it from this goal over here that is going to make you in sales, for example, achieve your goals quicker as well. And how do we need to adapt this to? And sales will more likely than not turn around and say, we just want to sell more stuff, right? So you have to motivate them more and say, this is going to help you sell more. This is going to help you hit your targets and get deals quicker as well. And you bring them in the room and you understand what those pain points are, and you talk it out, and you understand how the role of each of these different groups are going to benefit that other person. And that's going to take time. It's not something that changes overnight. And you have to write up a list of action points, and you have to stick to those action points. Don't let those points just become bits of wallpaper where you write it down one day and you forget it the next day. You have to keep bringing these people together and reviewing and seeing how things are progressing. Is life getting better? Because ultimately, all you're doing is trying to make their lives easier. That's my
great.
question.
I think you've mostly summarized everything that I was going to say. So yeah, no, thank you. Interesting one from Mike here. Hi, Mike. Hope you're well. Do you face incremental, unique challenges if your company is vertically aligned to an industry?
No, you don't. Again, it comes back to this understanding your audience. So it may be a different approach to how you are finding those audience groups as well. You might find that actually, if it's just one very specific persona in one specific vertical, then there may be a different tactic that you're going to use. You have to think carefully about, is it paid LinkedIn ads? Is it, social prospecting? Are we relying on SEO? Are we going directly for ABM as well? Are we going to buy a bunch of emails and try and make sure we send emails that aren't going to land in their junk box? But it's understanding how your audiences click. We work with companies that have maybe 5 verticals, and they have within those verticals 3 personas that they want to target, the full spectrum. So what we have to do is we craft a narrative, a messaging framework to make sure that we're being really clear how these people are engaging with content. What are the challenges? How are we solving their problems as well? Then all the content reels off of that messaging framework. But it's no different in the challenge.
Right. Yeah, I think there are kind of pros and cons from my point of view. Like one of the cons being I mean, we find it hard to market to these verticals on the Salesforce Ben platform because we don't have much segmentation. So, it's a problem on our side really. But, keyword volume for industry content to do with Salesforce is less, etc. However, I think the content that you can create can be so highly targeted that when you do find one of these customers, you've probably got a much better chance of converting them than, say, a much broader ISV or SI that really has to kind of do a spray and pray approach because the pain points are so generic. So yeah, I think I would say pros and cons from my point of view. But yeah, I think you're right, Si. The challenges are the same. Do we have no? I think that was the last one. All right, I think that's everything then. So yeah, finally, thank you very much for everyone attending today. I hope this has been really insightful for you. From my point of view, it's been a pleasure. Simon, thank you very much. Any last words before we sign off?
No, apart from good luck to West Ham in the cup tomorrow in Europe. Really hope they do well. My entire family support them, and we're all rooting for them tomorrow.
Nice. All right. Well, good luck, West Ham, and we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Cheers.